So ever since I started making videos about the Fender Tonemaster Pro, basically just saying that I had gotten one and showing everybody how I set up my pedal board and stuff like that, I've just gotten a ton of comments asking me to talk more about it, what I think about it, what my experience has been like, all of that. And bear with me here. I have so many thoughts and actually so much I want to say here that I had to take some notes for myself because there's no way I was going to be able to remember to cover everything that I wanted to, cover in this video. So if at times it looks like I'm reading something, I am. So lots of people have asked also why I chose the Tonemaster Pro over any of the other guys out there, Quad Cortex, Helix, any of those and stuff. And the honest answer is that I just had to choose one to start with. So here we are. I think right around the time that I was mentally preparing to go into this modeler world, this had just hit the market and it was just perfect timing. I decided to give it a go, and I've been pretty happy. So anyways, I've been a head and cabinet guy my whole life. I got my first half stack when I was 14, and I just know the sound of a real amp like the back of my hand. So up until recently, I had been using the Digitech GSP 1101 for all of my effects, using the 4-cable method. So my main tone was just always the pure unaffected amp signal, and any effects that I would use would be on top of that. So with the Tonemaster Pro, this is my first time using any type of amp modeler where my preamp tone and all my effects are produced solely from within this unit. There is no amp head involved whatsoever, although we are gonna mess around with that later in the video. Do a couple tests. Back to everyone asking what I think about it. I've been saying that I'm just not totally sure yet because I've wanted to test it out in a real world environment. Up until recently when we started Chimera rehearsals 3-4 weeks ago, I had just been testing this thing here in my studio at bedroom level volumes, and I needed to hear it up against real drums and other guitars, bass, a PA system to really feel how it was going to respond. How would the effects sound? How would it just sound at full throttle, just opened up? How would the gate be? How would the pitch shifting stuff work and everything just at full level? And so yeah, finally got the chance to do that. And then the ultimate test would be at a live show. How is it going to sound on stage for me? How's it going to feel? How's it going to sound out front for the audience? Obviously, I can't hear that, but our front of house engineer, our sound guy, he's certainly going to know, and he'll be able to tell me. So I'm going to talk about all of that and everything that I like and don't like about the unit, and then finally reveal whether or not I'm going to continue using the Tonemaster Pro now that I've put it through the paces. So let's get started here. This is the main tone that I've set up. First in the chain, not active, is like a tube screamer, but I just have it there. That I do have it active on my lead channel as the first thing, just for a little additional boost. But in my main tone, I'm not using any boost whatsoever into a gate, which obviously is modeled after an ISP decimator. And I think it sounds great. It's perfect. It's performed perfectly, as a matter of fact. I haven't had to make one tweak. Even as I set it up at this low volume, when you crank it up, usually you need more gate, but I didn't have to make any adjustments whatsoever when I started using it much louder with the band. So that's worked perfectly. Into a wah pedal there, which gets active once I start using it. And then into an Uber. And I just decided to go with this one. My choices were really the Uber and then the EVH 5150s that are in there. And for some reason, I just kind of like this one a little bit better. And I just try to dial it in how I'd normally dial in my PVs. I'm excited for if, in a future update, they get some like PV 6505s going. I'd be super stoked on that. But for now, the Uber is doing the trick. And then into this cloud reverb, just for a little, I'm gonna stop. Just a tiny bit there. Reverb on the end, so it's not totally dead. And then into this Mesa EQ, which I've never really been into using graphic EQs or anything like that, but this added just some really nice bite in, kind of the 4K range. I wish that it included some more kind of like surgical EQs, because there is some stuff I wouldn't mind carving out of there after that boost, or before the boost, I should say. Either way, kind of like, generally in the 3 to 4K area, get rid of a little bit of fizz, but that's not so important in a live situation. And hopefully your sound engineer can do that kind of stuff if it becomes any type of problem. And that's that. And then I have this split going on here with 2 outs. One out has no cab emulation, and because it's going to the Seymour Duncan power stage, which is the power amp, and then into my cabinet there. And then the other path goes through EVH cabinet representation, and that's going to front of the house. So my sound engineer ended up using a blend of both of those for live, and he ended up really liking it. I'll get more into that in great detail in a little bit. But anyways, yeah, so this just sounds like this. I think it's pretty killer. So pretty nice. I was happy with that, and that's what I decided to take into the rehearsals. And when I cranked it up, I thought it was pretty good. Maybe there was like a bit of top end that was like maybe a little crispy to me or something, and I was like, all right, well, I'm just gonna let the week of rehearsals go on and kind of dial that in as I go more if necessary. But I got distracted by the fact that Matt DeVries, other Camiros guitarist, was in fact using a 6505 into a Mesa cab, which is basically the Camira guitar sound recipe and what we've been using for 20 years and what everybody's used to hearing and what our ears are totally used to hearing. And I could hear the difference with us being right there in the same room together. I could tell that the real amp setup just felt more driven, more pure, just a ballsier, deeper low end. Not crazy different, but I could just tell the difference. And no one else in the room could tell the difference. Matt never said anything. It's not like Mark or Jim or anybody in the room was kind of like, hey Rob, why is your guitar sound different? Or why isn't it as good as Matt's? Or no one said anything like that. I was just hyper aware of everything that was going on because I was entering this new world here. So anyways, I noticed the difference, and I remember being nervous, kind of like, is this gonna work out? Because I want that drive, just a deep jun jun jun. I need that out of an amp, and which I thought I was getting, again, until you know what? Hold on one sec. I gotta do something. I've been having this problem where this camera just shuts off on its own. So just have to check that. Anyways, I was second guessing it, but it wasn't that big of a deal, and I decided to move forward. So we had a week of rehearsals, Monday through Friday, well, Monday through Thursday, and maybe like on Tuesday, as I'm starting to trip in my head, right before we started, I had put out this video where I was going over my setup. I'm sure a lot of you guys saw that, where I was going, just packing this up, packing up my guitars, getting ready to go to rehearsals. And the guitar guru himself, Oil England, commented on that video, and because I was playing through the Tone Master in that video before we went to rehearsals, and he said, I just tried this exact setup today. Sounded good. Not as good as in this video though, referring to mine. So because Ola at the same time happens to be going through the same thing where he's checking out the Fender Tone Master Pro live in a heavy metal setting, which is great to have somebody to like kind of bounce information off of and to know on the other side of the world somebody else is doing the exact same thing at the exact same time. So I commented to him that's funny because I had just watched his video on his live experience, and before that being in his studio just trying it out just like this, and I thought his tone was superior to mine, and I was envious of that. But he commented, maybe he was just being a nice guy, I don't know, but he commented that he thought mine was better. And so anyways, I say, that's funny because I just watched your video as soon as it appeared and thought that the tones you were getting were superior to mine, and I was definitely envious. And then I went on to say exactly what I just told you guys, that Matt, the other guitarist in Camira, is still using a 6505 Plus through a Mesa at rehearsals this week, and I can definitely hear the difference. His tone sounds deeper, more driven, and real in comparison to my digital representation. So in my opinion, there's simply no substitution for the real thing. However, the convenience of the smaller modeler-based rig still seems worth it, and I'm looking forward to continue experimenting and improving my tone day by day. There's certainly a lot of options, and we'll get this figured out, and that's still the way I feel right now. I'm still working on it. I'm happy with it, but I'm still working on it. These things take time, there's a lot to it. So, and then finally I say, I think we may be among the first Tone Master Pro pioneers in the world of live metal, which we are. So, pretty cool. It's great to have somebody like that to bounce ideas off of and even more on that in a little bit. All right, so in rehearsals, we go through that. I stick with it. I don't make any changes. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention too was that when I was going through my setup here, and I'm going through the Seymour Duncan power stage into my cabinet, as I mentioned. That's what you just hear. This is this. I am using some post EQ on the power stage here. A tiny bass boost, a tiny mid boost, a decent treble boost, and quite a bit of presence. And I just thought that that brought it a lot more to life and gave it more drive and bite. And I did that even before I heard Matt's rig. And the reason I decided to do it on this and not within the ToneMaster Pro's global EQ section is that global means everything. So if I were to initiate any global EQ within the Fender ToneMaster Pro, I'm pretty sure that it would go to both of my signal path outputs, which would mean that the front of house engineer wouldn't have as much flexibility. I'd rather send him the most flat tone I can and let him dial it in based on the room, the size of the room, how many people are in there, what type of reflections are happening, is it a dark room, a bright room, a long room, a short, all that kind of stuff. I'd rather just have him have more options, and I can control what I'm hearing on stage through my cabinet with these EQ. So when we do some tests here, I may turn off this EQ section. In fact, here's what it sounds like with my EQ. Let me flatten all that out, and it's just gonna sound flatter, that's all. So, and here it is again, just a little bump of this stuff. So obviously just a lot more presence, a little bit of just more clarity and in your face. So now we get to the show, and I'm sitting here thinking, all right, what's gonna happen here? How's it gonna sound for me when I hit the stage? And what's our sound engineer, Big John, gonna think out front? So I was extremely pleasantly surprised when I hit the stage, because my monitor sounded great, and that's just a crapshoot, especially in these throw and go shows where you're not on a tour with your own monitor engineer and those type of things. So you're just kind of at the mercy of how it's going to sound when you step on stage. Are you going to be able to hear yourself? Are you going to be able to hear the drums? Whatever you want in your monitors, vocals, things like that. So immediately my guitar sounded fat in the monitors, perfect, blazing at me just the way I like, huge kick and snare. And so my mix was just perfect in there, and I immediately got just a jolt of confidence, like, all right, good, at least it sounds good up here. And then the real test afterwards, I went right to Big John, who, I can't remember if I said this before or not, but he's just an audio genius. If you've ever seen Chimera live, I guarantee Big John, with the exception of a couple shows here or there since 2004 with scheduling conflicts or something like that, he's been the engineer that's made us sound great every night. So he knows our sound inside and out. And if there were a problem with my guitar sound, he would have said it right away. It'd have been like, "What? Why'd you change things? Why aren't you using a head?" But he's like, "Dude, it sounded great." And he said the best thing he could ever say. He said, "It sounded like what I'm used to hearing from you." So that right there was just golden information, and really confirmed it for me that I may have just been inside my head too much before, and to know that it sounded great live was fantastic, and that it works, that it's gonna work. And so not only am I getting the convenience factor of the smaller rig, but it sounds killer. So all the effects worked well, the decimator worked well. Anybody interested? Some guys that asked about this, the Shure GL XD 16 Plus worked flawlessly, not a single cutout, anything like that. It was perfect, tone was perfect. The only problem with it is that goddamn long name. Who's gonna remember Shure GL XD 16 Plus? I gotta write that down anytime that I wanna talk about it. So anyways, sorry, Shure. But I love the unit. It was perfect. I love the fact that it can just charge USB, from the unit or just from the wall. So no batteries. That's killer. So yeah, Big John loved it, and everything just went great. So then something happened that involves Ola again. Then, like a couple days later, maybe right after the show, I forget, he puts out a video Kemper tube versus solid state. And so he's using a Kemper, you know, just kind of like this guy. And then a couple days later, he puts out a Fender Toastmaster Pro one, which would have been even more perfect. But I honestly think that the results he got in the first Kemper video were slightly more apparent. And he was comparing using this exact same Seymour Duncan Power Stage 200 versus some other kind of like lunchbox tube power amp that he had. And when he did that, like just light bulb went off for me. I was like, dude, I didn't even think of that. I just didn't even consider the fact that using a solid state power amp would make any difference. It's obvious hearing it, but at the time, you know, until then, I just didn't think about that. So I was like, maybe that's the drive that I feel is missing. Maybe if I used a tube power amp, that I could get more of that just realistic kind of low-end response. There's a certain response that you feel, the way the pick hits the strings and what happens through the cabinet is just different. It's not make or break, but it's just different. And by all means, it should be. Like I've been saying, this is a digital representation. This is lots of computations happening to recreate the guitar sound that we're used to hearing in an analog environment. So there's gonna be discrepancies, and they're all manageable at this point. Like I said, nothing's been any type of deal breaker. But I was like, damn, what if I put, you know, a tube power amp, but that kind of like ruins my pedal board setup here for me, because like that one Ola's using, I can't remember the brand or anything like that, but it's like this big, and that just wouldn't work for my pedal board setup. And I quickly tried to look for other smaller tube things, and power amps, and I couldn't find any online. If there's any suggestions of anything this size, I'd be interested in checking it out. But it made me think, what if I just as an experiment, try using the power amp from my 51 or my 6505 there? So let's give that a try. We'll hear the difference between the Toastmaster Pro, just like Ola's test, through the Seymour Duncan Power Stage, and then we'll do it through the PV. Now the thing is, if it sounds great, it still doesn't do me any good, because the whole point of this for me was to eliminate having to carry around a head and travel with and stuff. I just wanted a small fly rig. So if it sounds better, it's just merely for the sake of the example. It's not like I'm gonna carry around a head with me just to do that. If I did, then I'd just use the 4-cable method and use the real tone from the 6505. So anyways, last thing I'll say about Ola is that when that video came out, it was so profound for me that it was almost like the video was made for me specifically. And obviously it wasn't. I doubt Ola had me in mind while he was planning or shooting the video, but I wanted to say that, you know, those are great YouTube videos when, as a creator, you can make a connection with somebody that almost feels like that video was made for them. So, Ola, obviously you're doing a fantastic job. Keep it up. You're an inspiration to so many of us out there. So let's check this out. Why don't I? We heard it sounds like with the Power Stage EQ'd with some more presence and gain, but here it is flat again. So we can eliminate as many variables as possible and give the tube amp a chance, you know, just even playing field again. So pretty good. A little, like I said, lacking presence, which is why I boosted that up. But so now I'm going to switch over to the PV's power amp, and as you can see, I hope you can see, all the dials are down all the way on the amp. So nothing is being colored in any way. We're just going to run into the return of the PV in the back, and we're just using its power amp section. So let's do that. Go here. So now the Fender is heading into the return of the power amp. All right. We have juice. We do not, oh, that's why. All right, here we go. I think I noticed a difference right away, but I'm not sure. And it's hard to tell, you know, when you have to get up, make changes, and you know, if you could just do it instantaneously and listen. But so let me try to play the same thing I played before. It was Save Ourselves by Camaro. I actually think it sounds pretty great. I don't know if I'm fooling myself trying to tell myself that the response is a little bit better than what I was looking for. I'm not 100% sure. I think both sounded great. Gun to my head right now, I would take this sound, but again, because of the convenience factor, that's kind of what I'm after there. Okay, so spoiler alert, I am definitely going to continue with this thing, and I'm going to continue to dial it in, but let's talk about some things that I don't necessarily like or that I think could be improved. And before I even say any of this, when I first got it, I submitted some of these thoughts to Fender, and nothing's really been addressed, but I really don't expect them to, because there's no two guitar players that are going to use this thing in the same way. Everybody sets it up to their own liking and their own preference and the best of their abilities and what works for them, whether they're just jamming at home or playing gigs or whatever the case. So I don't expect Fender to do anything for me. They're going to do more general updates that can help everyone, probably just more software stuff, bug stuff, you know, that's kind of the stuff. So I don't know that they'll actually address the things that I'm going to talk about, but one of the biggest things that's important to me is I wish all the buttons were assignable however I want them. Really, there's only 6 buttons here that you can assign to things. This is a bank down and a bank up. This is a tuner and a looper. I said this before, like, I'm never gonna use a looper, so I would rather be able to set that to, like, you know, one of my effects settings that I want, rather than having go up to bank up a page to my next set. That's just an extra step I have to think about live or while I'm jamming and stuff. That being said, the buttons are pretty close together. Nothing can be done about that. But I noticed while I was jamming, I'm in you know, the heat of the moment, ripping some solo, and I go to turn my lead tone back off and I step on the page down or something. And all of a sudden now I'm in the 400s because it's at 0, there's 500 preset banks. And all of a sudden now down in the 400s and I'm fumbling trying to, like, get back to wherever this is, you know. I mean, maybe that doesn't seem too hard, but when you're in the middle of a song playing a bunch of stuff, you can't just stop. And it was a problem. So to get around that, what I did was I programmed my main tone on the 400 and 500 page as well, so that if I accidentally went to it, I still had my main tones that I could just click, and then in between songs I could switch back over. So that's just kind of one little cheat that you can do as well if you're experiencing any problems like that. But yeah, I just wish these bank up and bank downs didn't exist. Then I could just use one page here for all my tones and I'd be set. So I think that's a big thing that I think that they could do. Why shouldn't you be able to assign that to whatever you want? I just don't get that. I mentioned that I wish there was some slightly more surgical EQs in here, but that's not a big deal. You can always add one. I can't because I'm out of room on my pedal board, but you know, I've seen other guys doing this and they still have other stomp boxes going on, you know, stuff that you can't get within this. So that's cool. And then in terms of just the representation itself, one thing I noticed that I'm not sure if this can be improved or not, and maybe people have experienced this or haven't with other units like the Cortex and stuff like that, is that I just noticed when I'm playing like a a bigger chord, meaning using more of the strings, especially the higher strings, they get washed out a little bit more. They don't ring quite as true, quite individually, you know, as like on a real amp. Like when I play that chord together, on a real amp, I can hear each string just better, I guess. Where here, I almost feel like the computations, whatever happening in there, can't quite handle all the information of all that big, I don't know, polyphonic signal coming towards it, you know, with all sorts of notes from within chords. Now, granted, right now I am on the PV tube and they do sound a little bit better to me. Maybe that has something to do with it, but again, I think it's just more of like the processing power. Not that this thing has low processing power or anything, I have no idea about that kind of stuff. I just think that these in general maybe have a tougher time representing fuller chords like that and stuff. Other than that though, man, I'm pretty stoked on everything. I'm excited for if some more of the amps, you know, that I'm looking for are put in this thing. Like I said, I'd love to have 6505s or, you know, PV 5150s. I realize there are EVH 5150s in there, but while I like those, I've never liked them as much as the PV versions. So that'd be cool, but I can get by like this too at the same time. So that's kind of going to wrap it up. In summary, my live experience was fantastic with it, and I will definitely be using it again. And I'm just excited to get to know it more and to keep learning and keep improving it and all that kind of stuff. Like I said, I'm dedicated to this thing. And only problem is now I got to get a second one as a backup in case something fails, right? No. Yeah, so if you made it this far, I really appreciate it. I know this is kind of like a niche type of video, you know, not everybody has a Fender Tonemaster Pro nor has the interest in it. So if you do, and again, if you've made it this far, I really appreciate you. If you dug this stuff and you're not yet subscribed to the channel, please make sure you hit subscribe, give it a thumbs up if you dug it, and check out some of the things in the description below, like my awesome Patreon community, my guitar instructional DVD, shipping with 10 free guitar picks, all that good stuff. If you are subscribed, you've been around for a long time, and you're part of my Patreon community, all you guys, I appreciate you so much. Thanks so much. Rob Arnold signing out. I'll see you on the next one.